Got some of the original paint. Roads, they can get you, but let's give them credit, folks. Alright, welcome back to the next installment of the 1967 Camaro. Can It Buff was the title of the last video, and we proved that there is red paint that can buff. So this time around I wanted to work on the door on the passenger side, as it had some red showing and it looked like I could get to it. So I started wet sanding and scraping with the razor blade and getting a surface that I could polish. Moving on to the next step here, we broke out the 600 grit with a firm block and some soapy water. That soapy water quickly turned to rusty water, but we just kept going anyways because you're not going to hurt this paint. Got some nice coarse compound on a coarse pad, and we're going to go ahead and just wail on this panel and just treat it like it's not ours, because we got to get some serious age off this paint, not to mention all of the little bits and chunks of primer that are on this paint. It seems to me that the primer that was put underneath the blue paint was maybe not mixed correctly. It's still gummy after all these years. It just kind of moves around until you burn it off of the red. So this is where I can start to see some dents in the door, and I can also see that it's going to clean up pretty nice. So I'm just going to keep going here and go through the grits and try and just burn down to some bright red paint. When doing this, it's important to stop periodically and clean the pad out because it will become full of rust. It's not really a problem on most cars, but when you don't wash a car for 40 years, you're going to get some of that. Well, we've got quite the improvement on the door. Jeez. I mean, look at that. Yeah, I think it's a mild improvement. Well, with the way that the door came out, I just couldn't help myself and moved straight onto that passenger side front fender. And lo and behold, there was red paint underneath the black and the primer. Blue. I don't even know. It looks black until it turns blue. The tops of the fenders really had a lot of stuff just on them. What seems to be no paint underneath, just it'll sand off, and there's red paint under there. So He just kept working away and wet sanding with, believe it or not, 180 grit. Doesn't seem to scratch the red paint, but it'll take off the primer and it'll take off the blue-black paint. So at this point, I figured I would go a little bit further and try and get as much red paint showing as possible. There were some casualties. There's a little, imperfection over here, and you're gonna have some burn throughs, but that's gonna give the car character.
Was there before.
So we're just moving on here with some swirl remover, which I find to be a pretty good jump in steps, but you get results, and the point of this video is just to see what we can get out of the paint. The results speak for themselves. I mean, I never expected the paint to be able to shine that deep, and this is really only 2 steps. Looking at the rear of the car, and all of a sudden 1967 shows up. I'd say we're moving in the right direction here. What do you think? Like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate every view and I appreciate every subscriber. I'm going to keep doing this no matter what, and I want to share it with everyone I can.